Until a calm June night in 1942, the Second World War was a long way from Newcastle. Almost everyone had a relative or friend in Australia's armed forces, but they were serving in Europe or Asia or the Pacific. The action was a world away. But that all changed at 2:17 a.m. on June 8th, 50 years ago.
It was just unreal to think that to bound up out of bed at that time in the morning and the next thing you're facing attack from the sea was just unreal.
Jim Cannon was a 21-year-old sergeant on duty at Fort Scratchley. He scrambled to one of the fort's 6-inch guns to discover a submarine from the mighty Japanese Navy sitting in Stockton Bight, shelling Newcastle.
It's as clearly defined in my mind now it was on the night of the attack, because the crew were feverishly working at the guns and defined in the light, it was quite easy to see it at that, even at the range of 6,500 yards.
The submarine, named I-21, was one of 5 mother craft that had launched the midget sub-attack on Sydney a week earlier. Now it was firing 34 rounds into Newcastle.
I thought, my God, if they don't put the lights out soon, we're going to be annihilated here, because we didn't know whether this was just one attacker or whether there could have been a dozen out there at that stage.
No one knows where most of the shells ended up, but a couple landed without exploding in the steelworks, another 2 in front of the fort, and 1 near a former tram station, now the bus terminus, in the East End. But the only shell confirmed to have exploded was the one that landed in Parnell Place, perilously close to homes.
This is where it hit, and it tore a hole about 4 foot, a crater about 4 foot, and I'd say about 6 inches deep, and it sort of blew all the tar out, you know.
Not that Noel Fraser's family was aware at first that the war had literally landed on its doorstep.
Like, come and have a, mother said to the father, come and have a look at this. It's like they're practicing out here or something. There's crackers or something going on. And the next thing, these shells are whizzing over, and bang, one went off while they were up there on that veranda looking out that window.
Shrapnel sprayed houses along Parnell Place, windows were shattered, and only one person was slightly injured. Remarkably, they were the only visible scars suffered by the city. The Japanese shelling of Newcastle was more than 3 times as intense as the bombardment of Sydney. Yet the fact that only 1, perhaps 2 of the 34 shells fired on Newcastle exploded indicates this city was miraculously lucky to escape from further damage and more casualties. Yet what the Japanese did manage to explode in the face of the local population was the myth that the war and all the horrors that go with it could never come here.
Psychological warfare was one of the key elements of it, but they also were aiming at the steel mill, and they didn't really have any high expectations of doing great damage, but that was a major element of using submarines, just to lob a few shells into a target, and you might hit something, but basically you wanted to put the population on notice that you were there.
I think people viewed it as just a matter of war. They just could not believe it. Could not believe it.
4 shots from Fort Scratchley's guns forced the Japanese submarine to slip out of sight into the dark Pacific after only 16 minutes. But fears of another greater Japanese attack never did fade from the city's mind for another 3 years after that night, when war reached Newcastle shores for the first and so far only time. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
When Ron Hearn and his wife Grace got around to renovating their home in Combined Street, ripping up the old lino seemed just routine. That was until they found 100 or so movie posters dating from the late 20s to early 30s.
I treated them very carefully because they'd been lying there since under that lino since early 1930, and they were, whilst a lot of them were in very good condition, they're fragile just the same.
Ron has found out they were used in the foyer of the Wingham Town Hall when the movies were shown there before a proper cinema was built in the town. While film-going played a big part in their courting days, Ron hasn't been to the pictures for a long, long while and has no qualms about what he'll be doing with the posters.
Well, I'm not a collector of movie memorabilia, and it would suit us very well to sell them. And so that's what we think we'll do once we've established the market.
But being a German Shepherd owner all his life, Ron will make an exception of a poster advertising Rin Tin Tin, and another which holds special significance for him.
The ones portraying Joan Crawford, she was somewhat of a pin-up girl to me when I was younger.
Now the mystery remains. Why did someone go to so much trouble to collect the valuable old posters just to use them as packing, when yesterday's newspaper would have served the purpose just the same?
The court was told that Paul Hart and Nigel Boland were seen at the Bellevue Hotel in Hunter Street, West Newcastle, in the early hours of Tuesday morning, where murdered businessman Simon McHugh was last seen at around 2 a.m. Police prosecutor Katrina Moy said that at 4:20 that morning, Hart and Boland were seen by a police officer washing a car in Warners Bay. They were questioned and the vehicle searched. McHugh's partly clothed body was found floating in Cockle Creek at Teralba at 6:30 on Tuesday morning. His skull and left arm had been fractured. A post-mortem revealed he died from drowning. The court was told that on Wednesday the 3rd of June, police went to an address in Cardiff where a car and a bag were taken into possession. Bloodstains were allegedly found in the back seat of the car, and a wristwatch allegedly belonging to McHugh was found in the bag, which also had bloodstains on it. At 3 p.m. yesterday, Hart, accompanied by his solicitor, walked into Newcastle Police Station but declined to say anything. No plea was made in court. According to police prosecutor Katrina Moy, Boland was charged 3 hours later by detectives. He too made no formal plea. However, in court, Boland's solicitor said the prosecution's allegations would be strongly denied. With Hart's parents looking on, Magistrate Colin Elliott refused bail and remanded both in custody for a further appearance on the 17th of June. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The doors are closing on 18 of Venture's 74 stores. 540 jobs are gone, 140 full-time. Today, the retail giant closed ranks, refusing to comment past a media release which says the stores earmarked for closure are out of step with current retail trends. Management and staff were instructed not to comment this morning. They didn't need to. The signwriter out the front told the story. Staff were notified yesterday. The bargain hunters were notified today. Venture won't confirm a closing date. It's believed the doors will shut early next month. Venture's Burleigh Head store on the Gold Coast is also closing. Stores and Taree are unaffected. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
According to the Commonwealth Employment Service, the unemployment rate in the Taree area is one of the highest in the state. Jeff Pooley from the Taree Job Placement Centre believes that unusually high rate is due to a number of factors.
This area and the coast generally has traditionally, for a long period of time, has had high levels of unemployment. Taree itself has probably been a little bit better protected than some other country centres on the coast because of the good manufacturing and retail base that we have here.
He sees as another reason the movement of Sydney people to Taree seeking a better lifestyle. The former city slickers are settling in Taree in the hope of a cheaper way of life, but are finding job opportunities increasingly difficult.
A lot of younger people coming back to the area to look for some family support, finding themselves unemployed in Sydney, unable to cope down there, and they come back to get the support of their family while they regroup their finances and look towards another career.
All up, there are more than 6,000 people on the Taree CES books, with more than 4,500 claiming benefits. A regional committee has been set up by Taree resident Les Brown to conquer the unemployment problem with long-term job-seeking programs and training courses. The CES boss remains hopeful.
From where we stand at the moment, things seem to be fairly stable at the moment. We're certainly experiencing the effects of the recession in this area. Things haven't deteriorated too much in the last few months, and I'd expect that things would stay reasonably stable for the next couple of months anyway.
Police investigations into the woman's death have been low-key, to say the least. Details of Mrs Christophers' injuries are limited to suggestions she died of head injuries, but post-mortem results are not being released. The return of Newcastle detectives to the dead woman's address on Dawson Street today heightened speculation that the inquiry may have intensified. Police would only say they were returning to the scene to clarify a few matters. It's understood they've door-knocked a large section of the neighbourhood, as well as interviewing dozens of people at local hotels. Mrs Christophers was well known in the neighbourhood, but her last movements remain a puzzle. One theory, that she may have disturbed an intruder, hasn't been discounted. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
It was a case of plenty of laughs and little quality racing in the little township of Barnbar that boasts a population of only 40. Oh, and the goats, of course. Events were open to people of all ages, with jockeys ready to ride in their homemade carts. Despite a little trouble reaching the starting line, they were soon off and racing. From here, things seemed to go from bad to worse, with the ladies' event seeing Leslie McDowell streak ahead, closely followed by a challenger. But then Leslie and her goat and cart bit the dust too. The kids also had their problems, one outfit getting a bit too friendly with a tree, and another mount just giving up. He'd run as far as he was going to go for one day. Barnbar's first annual goat races were a resounding success, with all involved keen to come back for more punishment in October. "92 students are involved in this production, 62 on stage and the rest behind the scenes. They've been working on their act since the beginning of the year. This Friday they'll compete against other schools in the region for the chance to perform in Sydney in the Rockestedford final. It's almost an all-student production. They've made the costumes with the help of a few teachers, they do the makeup, and they chose the music. Teachers say it's been a terrific experience for the students.
We entered the Rockestedford simply because we wanted to improve the students' self-esteem and just so they could enjoy a competition with a little bit of dance, and it's something different in the school basically.
In the shadow of Alum Mountain nestles the Great Lakes Nursing Home. But to the 1,100 or so residents of Bulahdelah, this structure is more than just home for 40 aged people. It's a monument to the town's generosity and perseverance. The $1.9 million home is built on a firm foundation, the desire of Bulahdelah to ensure its aged would never again have to leave the old timber town. A couple of years ago, resident Lindsay Ireland told the townspeople they had 18 months to raise $400,000 for the nursing home. It seemed an impossible dream.
And everybody thought, oh, that's mad, it's too much money, but anyhow, they got it, so.
Countless bingo calls, raffles and dance steps later, Bulahdelah had reached its target and dreams are now bricks and mortar.
And for a tiny community, I think with a population of around 1,100 people, I think that's remarkable.
It's not as if Bulahdelah is made of money. In fact, the tax office figures suggest it's one of the poorest areas in the state. But as far as the town folk are concerned, if you want something for Bulahdelah, you work for it and you don't give up.
At one stage we had a school that needed to be built and the government wouldn't give us the money for it, so they decided to build it themselves many years ago. And so with the nursing home, it's just turned out the same way.
Lindsay Ireland is in hospital, but he's not about to rest on his nursing home dream. He now wants Bulahdelah to chip in for an adjoining hostel, and Bulahdelah just might oblige.
We think if you live in a town, well, right, you are the town.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Pasminco's multi-million-dollar plan involves upgrading its entire operation, replacing outdated and inefficient equipment. The company says this will significantly increase the plant's zinc and lead production capacity, at the same time decreasing emission levels. The upgrading is scheduled to be completed in 1997, stage 1 beginning next year. Pasminco's application went to council 2 weeks ago, but was deferred with aldermen wanting more information. So at tonight's meeting, Pasminco representatives presented the company's case. They also announced a public inquiry would be set up to answer any community fears. One point that stalled approval is if the upgrade necessitates an environmental impact study before work begins. Over the last few months, both Pasminco and City Council have sought legal advice about the need for an EIS. Council has also employed consultants from the University of New South Wales to research the subject. The consultants' report, as with all other advice, suggests that an EIS is not needed in the first stages of the upgrade. But it is recommended Pasminco complete an EIS for the overall project before it's finished in 5 years' time. Pasminco's Environmental Projects Manager, Sharon Howes, says if Council approves the upgrade, the company will begin an EIS immediately, and the planned buffer zone will go ahead. Not wanting to preempt Council's vote, earlier today Mayor Doug Carley said he expected the plan to be approved on the proviso an EIS is done within the next 5 years. Should Council reject the plan,
then I think we've got good grounds to have a look at what action can be taken through the perhaps the Land and Environment Court.
Police admit that this afternoon's press conference is an unusual step considering that the events leading up to the woman's death are still very much a riddle.
As police, we have an open mind regarding the matter. We are being assisted by the physical evidence and the forensic pathologist, Dr. Ferguson, to ascertain the true facts regarding the matter.
50-year-old Mrs. Viv Christophas was found in a bedroom of her Dawson Street home by a friend. She'd suffered a massive head wound, but police are giving out few other details. The baffling nature of the case has placed police in a dilemma. On one hand, they're most anxious for public assistance, but on the other, they're extremely reluctant to give away any information they already have. Police have released a photo of the dead woman in the hope that members of the public may recognise her and help account for her final movements between 2:45 on Wednesday afternoon and early Thursday morning. The appeal coincides with the launch of a 24-hour crime phone-in on 290 822, which begins from 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
We're always available for people to contact us, but occasionally we put on a phone-in for people to know to contact us on this particular number so that we can help them.
Police will staff a hotline throughout the 24-hour period. They're especially anxious to hear from people with complaints of housebreaking, car stealing, illegal drugs or offers of stolen goods. Further information on the last hours of Mrs. Christophas would be a valuable bonus. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Lake Macquarie Council last night approved stage 1 of a massive upgrade of the Pasminco smelter at Bullaroo. In return, company general manager Alan Roberts agreed to start preliminary work on an environmental impact statement. The EIS will cover the entire $42 million upgrade, due to be completed in 1997. With the upgrade underway, Pasminco can now go ahead with plans to buy around 46 houses opposite the plant. It wants to establish a buffer zone between itself and the community. Letters will be sent to residents in the designated area tomorrow explaining the buying process, what added expenses will be borne by the company and how valuations will be determined. It's expected Pasminco will begin purchasing houses within the next 2 to 3 months. Also last night, members of the No Lead resident group held a meeting to discuss the recent report Living with Lead. The No Lead group is concerned that little is being done to act on the recommendations contained in the report. They want a guarantee of funding from the state government so that the clean-up of lead can get underway in earnest.
The onset of winter coincides with that other seasonal event, the end of the financial year and the arrival of your tax pack. The Newcastle Tax Office is distributing income tax forms to almost 500,000 wage earners from the Central Coast as far as Coffs Harbour in the northwest. While the Tax Department is keen to see your return as soon as possible, they have some important advice. Don't rush it.
It could be a disadvantage at a later date if any adjustments have to be made. A lot of errors occur because of hasty preparation of returns.
And for those considering something a little more serious than an innocent mistake, be warned. New computer technology allows the department to take a closer look at your finances.
We have more and more information available to us now through computer systems, and that means that things like interest from banks, building societies, credit unions and other financial institutions is readily available to us.
Tax pack forms will continue to be distributed over the next few days. The last should arrive in the mail by June 16. Tom Hilston, NBN News. When the midday shift emerged from Wallara Colliery on the southern end of Lake Macquarie, they'd set a record equal to none. The 200 miners have completed an entire year, or almost 500,000 hours, without time lost due to injury. It's an event so completely unexpected that the National Safety Council of Australia had no formal award to recognise the achievement. Wallara manager Jim Samuels says the result may be an Australian record.
The employees at the mine and the man at the mine didn't set out to break any records. We had a major concern of the accident frequency rate at the mine and set out to reduce that.
The mine hasn't always enjoyed its present reputation. 18 months ago, 2 men died underground in separate accidents, but today the mood was one of professional pride. The miners will each receive a reflective sticker indicating their 1 year of safety, a highly prized collector's item, and from the company, a more practical gift, a toolkit for each man. Tom Hilston, NBN News.